everyone. It's a pleasure welcoming my dear friend Manu Singh for a session on the concept of Samvaad. Manu Singh is the chairman of Sarva Dharma Sansad, New Delhi. In the past, he served as the vice president and media secretary of the World Council of Arya Samaj. He was also a trustee of the Sarva Dharma Sansad, or Parliament of Religions. You're welcome, Manu, and you have up to 2 hours for this session. And you're welcome to conduct it however you like to. And all of you, please keep your cameras on during this session. Over to you.
Thank you so much, dear Behzad. It's always a privilege and an honor to conduct a session for India Law Foundation, and especially for you. I must express my deep gratitude towards you for always making space and time from my point of view. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Just raise your hand like this so that I may know. Thank you. So I hear some sounds, so it's a slight request that please put your microphone on mute so that, thank you. Yeah. Now, before I begin, I would like to stress on what we do in Sarva Dharma Sansad. So it's basically an organization that promotes action-oriented dialogue amongst the youth of various faiths, traditions, cultures, and religions. Now, when I say dialogue, the word dialogue has a deep-rooted meaning in the precepts, the tenets of Hinduism. And it's not something that is a unidimensional process, but it's a multi-dimensional process. And the three dimensions that I want to discuss with you today are basically the tenets of Samvaad. Dialogue is loosely translated, like Samvaad is loosely translated into the English dialogue. What is Samvaad? Samvaad, as Adi Shankaracharya has clearly defined, comes from when people are sitting in Sansad, in Satsang. Now, Satsang is true company. So when I am in a discourse with someone else with complete truth, with complete transparency, with complete clarity, that is Satsang. As the term itself, Sat means the truth and Sang means company. Similarly, the word Samvad is divided into two parts, Sam and Vad. Vad means to speak. Like debate is called Vad Vivad. So Vad means to speak, while Sam comes from the root word Samta. Samta means, if I may say, the accurate translation would be a midpoint between balance and equanimity. So I would use the word equanimity for Samta. What exactly is equanimity? Equanimity is when one is very non-judgmental in his or her purview. So when I do not judge somebody, I do not judge something, that is the state of equanimity or the state of observational reality. That means I will look at reality just the way it is, not be affected by what are the emotions within me, and not be affected, not putting a value judgment tag on what it is. So that equanimous dialogue is what is Samvad. The process involves first an inner dialogue. So without Antar Samvad, we cannot have Bahya Samvad. So the first precept here is Antar Samvad. Bahya Samvad is cultural, it is religious, it is intellectual. But what the basic tenet is that without Antar Samvad, now what is Antar Samvad or inner dialogue? So inner dialogue is divided into three parts, which has been stressed in Bhagavad Gita and later also stressed in the precepts of Buddhism. So first part is Vigyan. Vigyan is also science, but also noun. So whenever there is an interaction of one of the senses with something external, it is called Vigyan. Before Vigyan comes, after Vigyan comes Sangya or noun. So whenever Vigyan, so suppose I saw an object, once I have seen an object, that's the Vigyan part of it. My eyes have seen it. Now the second process that occurs is I tend to look at it and know what it is. So suppose I see this mobile phone. Seeing is the Vigyan, and then naming it, understanding it. Okay, this is a mobile phone. That is Sangya. These two steps, and further, then there is Sanskara. Sanskara is attaching a value judgment to what I just saw and what I just named. What kind of mobile this is? What do I like this mobile? Do I not like this mobile? Uh, like if I don't have a good mobile, which one? All this process happens inside my brain. So this is called sanskara. Now, when one wants to become a dialogue practitioner or a person who wants to indulge in the process of samvad, the inner dialogue or the antar samvad should be the first step, which should be the correction of sanskaras. How does one correct sanskaras? Now, I gave you a mobile example, which was a basic physical example. But whenever you see or meet or interact with another person, the first thing is Vigyan. You'll see the person. Second, recognition. Sangya. You will understand what kind of person, who that person is. The problem or the problem comes when you start indulging into the sanskara part of it. The sanskara here, whatever experiences you've had with that kind of person, suppose with there has been a particular kind of person you've met and that person resembles that person. So whatever that is very multi-layered. It depends on the gender of the person. It depends on the physical attributes of the person. It depends on which culture that person, which race that person, which caste that person, which creed, which religion that person belongs to. All of them have crystallized and formed into a thought process, and your brain starts reacting to that thought process. That is sanskar. So a dialogue practitioner would concentrate on decreasing this crystallization of the sanskaras. That how these sanskaras would come up, they would create ripples in the brain, but he would not react as the sanskaras want him or her to react. So this is a process that we call as antar samvad, or what in modern terminology is called meditative dialogue. This is very important, and this is the first precept of samvad or dialogue in the concept of Hinduism. Without antar samvad, we cannot establish an external dialogue of any kind with anyone. That is the first rule. So there are several ways of uh, of correcting the sanskaras. there is Kayotsarg, there is Upasna, there is Kriya Visheshan, there is Mandibhaj, there is Yoga Marg, there is Tantric Marg, and post with the blessings of Lord Siddhartha, we also got the Vipassana Marg. So all these margas, they concentrate on the human being or human being's subconscious mind, so that we can train our mind in a way that we can move beyond the concept of an affector's reality, a reality in which we are affected. We can migrate from that reality, and we can enter a realm where we become just merely an observer. That is the process that Antar Samvad teaches us. I'll just discuss one of the ways, uh, like the Kayotsarg way. Kayotsarg way teaches us to just concentrate on our breathing whenever we are having an external interaction. It is also the first step in a lot of other meditative principles, which is called anapan. In Kayotsargi, we will just notice the inhalation and exhalation while we are interacting with either a material reality or a conscious reality. That means either matter or any other form of life. So whenever we are reacting, we train ourselves that a lot of our consciousness would be focused just on being a witness of how our breathing is operating during those times. So what this does is that there's a link that is established between the sanskaras and the breathing. How's that link possible? It's like whenever there is a sanskar that arises within our subconscious, the what in the Hindu terminology I would say that the subconscious is divided into, like, it's called the antakaran, which is divided into several parts. It's called chitta. So whenever there is a sanskara that arises on the chitta is crudely translated into consciousness, the pattern of our breathing would change, and it's divided into two branches. In English, I can say that one branch is called craving and the other branch is called aversion. So we generally, our sanskara, no matter how multi-layered it is, how judgmental it is of the interaction, it will generally give birth to two kinds of external feelings. Craving is something that you want to really accept, you really want that, and the other is aversion, something that you really dislike and you don't want that. So either to possess or to throw away. Craving and aversion, these two branches. These two branches, whenever uh, they come into being after the sanskaric process, this is called the reactionary process, our pattern or natural flow of breathing gets transformed, gets it gets different. So whatever our breathing is, our chakra is, which is called the Shwas chakra, the chakra starts to behave erratically. So if this is also the cause of stress, of anxiety, of any lustful behavior, of any kind of uh, grosser reality, that grosser experiences, grosser reactions that we human beings indulge in. So in this process of anapan, what we are trying to exert, what we are trying to establish is that whenever we are having an interaction with something or someone, we will be a witness of what's going on, but also a witness of our breathing. That's one of the methods. There are several other methods. Some of the methods uh, uh, concentrate on just observing the sensations that arise during an interactions on our body, but also again those sensations have to be looked at non-judgmentally. Some of the interactions will actually concentrate on the third eye region of the brain. The Gayatri Sadhana uh, concentrates on that. So overall, the basic motive is to ensure that we are in a non-judgmental state while having an external interaction. The key here is non-judgmental attitude. This is the key, and why I am really fascinated by this Antar Samvad is that uh, a lot of literature beautifully illustrates and beautifully elaborates that how we treat ourselves, it's the same way that we treat others. So there are lots of texts that until and unless we oppress our own selves, we won't oppress the other. Until and unless we judge our own selves, we won't judge the other. So this uh, eradication of non-judgment can only happen when we look at all the interactions that we have in the physical or the conscious world externally from a viewpoint of a non-judgment attitude. So this Antar Samvad, all the processes are actually aimed at that particular uh, goal. And not only is it migration from being affected by the subconscious into, say, building that bridge between the subconscious and the conscious mind, it is also uh, a, a process which builds a bridge between the so-called division that we now see between mind and body. So the body consciousness and the mental consciousness, that bridge is also built by these processes. Now, these meditative processes of Antar Samvad, or which is called as inner dialogue, they have their root in the Rig Veda, and they have been elaborately discussed by Lord Krishna and Arjun in the Bhagavad Gita. And also the basic tenets of both Jainism and Buddhism discuss a lot about going inside, finding inside. In fact, um, one of the shlokas assert in one of the Vedic shlokas is like Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande. That means if I have to elaborate on it scientifically, I would say that if you can understand this pinda, that is the body, then you can understand the entire cosmos. So this Antar Samvad, the the basic the basics I've already talked about, and I'll keep coming back to that. Similarly, what happens is when we have trained ourselves uh, in this method of training of being a non-judgmental person, when we have interactions in the outside, which is called external dialogue, then our aim, our entire purview should be to adopt the same kind of approach that we adopted uh, in finding our own reality, our own truth within. We must adopt the same approach. Now, what approach does one adopt when he looks at his own self? So, what happens is, I'll give you an example that suppose you go for any of these techniques. Suppose I have been a personal practitioner of Vipassana. I have done more than 18 camps right now. I have done a 100-day retreat also. So what happens is the approach is very simple. You go into a silent meditation, and in that silent meditation, There is no interaction of any kind. You cannot write, you cannot speak. You just sit and meditate for long hours. Uh, so what exactly happens is you keep revisiting things you've done, your memories. Sometimes you keep interacting with what your ambitions have been and what you wanted to happen in the future. Sometimes you visit. There are a lot of these, but once you start getting into the process, because you're not talking, because you're not interacting, this fodder of the mind keeps decreasing, and slowly you start to go into the core uh, of what you've done and what you want to do. You start looking at yourself, and because it's yourself, you stop judging yourself. You look at it compassionately, that okay, I did this thing, but these were the reasons, and this is what I did, this is what happened. You keep your understanding becomes like a scapula. It becomes finer and finer and sharper. And I would not say understanding, I would say consciousness. Your consciousness turns into a scapula. And sooner or later, you reach a stage where your consciousness, it enters an observational existence. Now, when does your consciousness, when it happens, is I'll try to explain to you through an example, that if you visualize your mind like a huge castle, just visualize your mind like a huge castle, and I'll say it's a medieval castle, uh, where there is no electricity. It's dark time. Say it's in the Scandinavian countries. There's extreme Scandinavian countries where uh, there's 4 months of just darkness. It's a beautiful castle, and there's just one doorkeeper. There's one guard who has one lamp. Now, whichever room, there are several rooms. There are several bedrooms. There are kitchens. There are uh, there are bathrooms. There are other several kinds of rooms. So whichever room the guard will go with the lamp, that room will illuminate. So he'll be able to see that room only. That's the connection between consciousness and our our mind. Our mind is also like the same catacomb structure, the same nebulous structure is of our mind, where each room is of different passions, of different memories, of different ambitions, of different thoughts. And the problem here is of an untrained mind, the problem is that our guard is not in our control. So it keeps going to different rooms, and we keep experiencing several thoughts at the same particular mind. And sometimes when it visits thoughts that we have actually judgmentally and very passionately invested in, we feel that emotion over and over again. So something untoward happened. I'll give an example. That's natural. Life will, whenever we are whenever we are existing in this plane, we will experience things that are pleasant and things that are unpleasant. We will experience separation, we will experience death. But what happens is our mind is trained habitually in a manner, because some of our hormones of grief are very addictive in nature. They have the same composition as that of cocaine, scientifically. So what happens is that once we have an experience of grief, of sadness, of anger, our mind would our mind would constantly be stuck in that zone. So what happens is we keep revisiting it, and it's a very unnatural process. How is it unnatural? I suppose I am a stand-up comedian. I come on stage and I tell you a joke, all of you. We have 26 participants right now. It's a fabulous joke. You all will enjoy it. And then I say another joke, which is the same with the characters changed. It was it was an amazing joke. Some of you might giggle again. But third time or fourth time or fifth time, if I say the same joke, not just changing the participants of the joke, you'll just term me as stupid. He said his joke was fine, but he's just keep repeating the same joke. You won't laugh at it, you'll get bored. Am I right? But what happens? This is natural. You can't listen to the same joke and laugh again and again and again. But look what our mind does. Suppose we had an unpleasant experience. Suppose let's take for an example, we were in love with someone and we got dejection from that. There was a breakup and we got a sense of rejection. What our mind does is that it keeps on repeating that loop. We will not cry for that particular moment only. I mean, of course, when something untowards happen, it's natural to be in a state of grief, but it's unnatural to stay in that state of grief. Why is it unnatural? Because our consciousness is not in our control. That guard with the lamp will continue visiting only that particular room and keep bringing out the same kind of emotion, which we don't do when we hear a joke over and over again. But with grief, it's so repetitive. So this is what happens with an untrained consciousness and an untrained mind. So these antar samvad precepts, they train us to keep a control over that guard, which is our consciousness, so that when we want, we can direct that particular person to the particular room that we want, which is the present. So antar samvad is basically a non-judgmental way of, I'm just getting a question here, our consciousness is not in our control. What is this random statement? This is Rajan. Okay, Rajan, see, sometimes what happens is that there's a term called lost into translation, right? There are several terms in Sanskrit and Hindi that I would have used right now while actually giving this, but this being in English, the term for chit, and there are 11 types of chit. Even ego is a kind of a chit. What I'm talking about here is vritta chitta, right? But all of them are loosely translated into consciousness. You're right when you say that our consciousness, but just look at consciousness here as a multi-dimensional. Just look at it as a cumulative term to define all the multi-dimensional kinds of chitta here. Chitta is not, there is no perfect translation in English of consciousness, of chitta. So we loosely that's why in the beginning also I said that it is loosely translated into consciousness. Anyways, coming back. So what happens is that through these precepts, through these principles, what we do is we try to attain that level in which, and that is not an like it's not a mathematically unified level that you'll be able to achieve that perfectness. But what we try is, most of the times we can control that guard with the lamp, and we can we can actually direct, not control, direct our sense of ego, our sense of vritta chitta into that particular room that we want. So what happens is, and this is very possible. We all experience it. if whenever you go to see, say, a good cinema, a good movie, or you read a good book, what happens is that a good director, a good author would make you feel what you want to, what he or she wants you to feel. So in a good movie, you will feel a sense of romance, a sense of action, a sense of adventure, if he's good. In the same way, you are the director of your own movies, your own stories. So what you need to do is you need to be a very good director and try and keep your sense of being into the present, of your sense of mental being into the present most of the times, as much as possible. What and why is it important for an interfaith practitioner? Because you're also doing this course on interfaith dialogue. Why is it important? Because a dialogue practitioner will come across several kinds of people who practice different kinds of faith, who practice different kinds of, who come from different kinds of cultures, who come from different kinds of places. So what happens is that biasnesses will arise. And no matter how intellectually sound one is, until and unless one does not feel this sense of inner equanimity, we cannot actually truly love the other. And and our concept here should never be uh, just to understand or just to like tolerate differences. Our concept should always be in the external dialogical world to celebrate differences, to in a way love the differences and understand that without these differences we cannot exist. And that is why when it comes to external dialogue, the Vedic teachings always stress on the fact that ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. Truth is one, but it is narrated by everyone in a different way. Ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. Also, the most important mantra, the most important Vedic mantra, which is also called the mother of all mantras, what I would say that it is also said to be the first mantra, first or the primal mantra of all the four Vedas, the Gayatri mantra. Even that is such a beautiful interfaith statement that the world has ever had. Like, just if you look at the mantra, Om Bhur Bhuvasva Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. It's divided in two dimensions. One dimension is the social dimension. The social dimension, the meaning is pretty simple, that we are praying to the Almighty that please ensure that our wisdom, our intellect, our buddhi, it is please put it on the path of righteousness. Shresht marg par laga, which is in Hindi it is called. So it is put on the path of righteousness. On the spiritual dimension, if you break down the mantra, it asks, it is a prayer to the Almighty that please, Almighty, just uh, ensure that we step by step move from the grosser realities to the subtler realities. Now, this mantra, before the meaning, in the first 7 syllables, tries to describe the Almighty. So, Om, Bhur, Bhuva, Sva, Tat Savitur, and Varenyam. Tat Savitur and Varenyam. Varenyam is the 7th syllable. Varenyam means crudely dharan karne yogya, or something that has to be accepted. But the key word of Varenyam, which is describing the Almighty after giving 7 syllables, after giving the first 6, the key word is var. That's the core word of Varanium. Var means to choose. That if you know, before the marriage, there is a term called Swayamvar. Swayam is me, and to choose. I choose. Similarly, Varanium, the key word is var. So it means the entire thing is that he's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and the way I choose him to be. This is so beautiful that it gives a freedom to everybody, not only according to their faith, not only according to their culture, but according to their individuality, according to their individual understanding, that I will perceive him the way I want to perceive him. I don't need a middleman telling me. I will, because this is the path of experiential reality, I will tread this path of experiential reality on my own. So when it gives this complete freedom to everyone else, it's the same way that my favorite philosopher uh, Rumi said that divine truth is like a giant mirror that fell from the sky and broke into several pieces. Everyone has a piece of it, but only when we embrace everyone will we have the entire reality. So my piece and your piece are all the pieces of that uh, great reality. The point here is that until and unless
I'm sorry for interrupting. Zishan raised a hand. Zishan, did you want to ask a question? And would you like to take questions at the end, or they can ask questions in the middle too?
I think I'll just conclude within five minutes, and we'll have a break, and then I'll continue again,
Okay.
because
Because
philosophically we've gone into this session. So yeah, I'll take the questions right now, but I can see a lot of comments coming.
yes, Zishan wanted to ask one. Zishan, please go ahead.
Yes, Zishan,
Good
please.
afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for enlightening us. Actually, I had a question really very prior to what you were talking about. So I had question regarding ki, when we are talking about mm, the Samvaad, is it limiting the wandering of the consciousness, or is it avoiding that consciousness doesn't fall into some kind of impasse, a state of non-movement?
Okay, so first, what we must understand is that when we say consciousness, again, as I said, it's a very multi-layered concept, right? In our basic philosophy, we divide it into 11 parts, right? The 11th part, or what I would translate it as the ego part, ahem, right? Uh, that ahem has uh, a particular arm, as I would say, extension, because it's all visual. So it has a particular arm that controls our thoughts, right? So I am right now referring only to that arm of ego, not the entire web of consciousness. The entire web of consciousness is actually the entire cosmos itself, and it is this ahem that gives us an illusion of separateness from the consciousness. We are not separate from the consciousness. We are a part of the consciousness. It is only this ego that creates an illusion that I am separate from you or this entire world. That is what the entire precept is. So when I'm saying that I'm trying to direct the consciousness, it is not I do not have the ability of, my mind does not have the ability to direct the entire consciousness. I'm trying to direct just that ego part of my consciousness into a thought process where I can concentrate my thoughts into the present. That's it. Okay. Not the entire, I cannot, I really cannot do that. But a part of this consciousness is called ahem, and there is an arm of ahem that is very important. We cannot just disregard the entire ego, because a part of ahem is also to concentrate on our survival. It protects us. Without ego, without ahem, we cannot, we will go into a state which is self-destructive. We will not care about ourselves. So it is just one arm, and the time is so short that if I indulge into all the chittas and all the, it'll be, we really need 6 months of course for that. So what I'm trying to stress here is just on that arm of ego that is directing our thoughts, or what in the modern lingua I can say, a sense of awareness. Right. So if I have to say that, if I have to name that, that little, the guard I was talking about, I would say that's our awareness. And we all have the ability of directing our awareness. We do. In times of, say, exams, we try our best to direct our, some can do it better, the others can't, the others can do it better in, say, sports, but we all have the ability to direct that part of awareness. Awareness also is actually a part of the chitta. So that's again loose translation. I hope I was able to. You have a further counter question, Zishan? Zishan, do you have a further question? Anyways, I think we lost Zishan here. Any other question before I continue?
Yes, sir. I would like to ask if I'm audible, sir.
Yes. What's your name, please?
My name is Rajan, sir.
Yes, Rajan, please.
Yeah, sir. One question is that. Let me come to the meeting. Yeah, sir. You propose that if you really want to be in the present moment, we have to concentrate on the meeting, or like it is very essential to be in the present. But you know, in Indian philosophy, the very saying that being in the present is an illusion, because there is no present at all. Because the moment I say present, it has already gone. So which present you are basically talking about? Because there is no existence of present. I can prove that philosophically. I have got lots of argument for that. So the essence or the philosophy of present is just an illusion. What would you say on that thing?
See, I did not say that we must be in the present. What I said that we must direct our consciousness, our awareness. I'll use the word awareness now because consciousness is creating a plethora of predicaments here. So what I would say is that we must direct our awareness into as much of the present as possible, which means that we must understand that the presence itself is extremely layered and extremely subtle. It's a process. It's not a destination to be reached. So you're right when we say that as soon as we are in the present, it becomes the past. But it is our job to ensure that our thought process, our awareness is continuously matching up with the Kala Chakra. Without that, if we get pulled back, or if we try to just invest our entire thought process into the future, we become beings of either anxiety, stress, judgments. Without this, it is impossible to actually be a good dialogue practitioner, because as I was saying, this is just for being a person of antar Samvaad. It is very important to be non-judgmental. And how does one become non-judgmental is when we are not in the trappings of the past, and when we are not in the trappings of when we are not in the creations of the future. That was my whole point. I was not saying that we should be all the time in indulged in the present. My point is that we must be aware, maximum aware of the present, what is happening at this moment. That was my point.
Rukya, you wanted to ask a question?
No, it's okay, sir. Fine. No.
Sir, sorry to interrupt.
Yes. Well,
Please.
I hope I'm audible. Yeah, sir.
Yes.
Sir, in psychology,
What's your name?
so my name is Pal.
Pal. Okay, yes, Pal, please.
Yeah. Sir, in psychology, we were taught about our subconscious mind and conscious mind. So here you are trying to say that ego acts as a bridge between, id and superego, wherein id is a pleasure principle and superego is our value, and ego acts as a reality bridge between all the consciousness, like what is real, and we are aware. That's what here you are trying to put. I hope I'm right. Like,
You're sort of, I'm not saying that ego acts as a bridge. What I'm saying is ego, psychologically ego is different and philosophically ego is different. But what I'm
yeah,
saying,
but
trying to say is philosophically, ahem, what is called, this
yeah,
is what creates this sense of separation.
okay.
It is what creates a sense of separation between us and the cosmos. This ahem creates this, the separation between me and the other. This creates the separation between mind and body, and between cravings and aversions. So philosophically, ego is different, and psychologically, the concept of ego, because I have studied psychology a lot, and
Yeah.
and also I would like to stress upon here that antar samvad, or what in modern lingua is termed as mindfulness, is one of the only ways, this is for you especially, and anybody else who's studying psychology, is one of the only ways to not only decrease the gray cells around the amygdala, but also to counteract the DMN, or the default mode network of our brain. Uh, Modern contemporary psychologists are concentrating a lot on how to countering the default mode network, and our antar samvad is one of the only ways available right now. There is no other way available. And thirdly, also antar samvad, or mindfulness, or all meditative living increases the length of the telomere of in our neurons. So these three things, because since you spoke about psychology, these three things not only help us into living a healthy life, but also into indulging into a healthy dialogue with the other. So thank you for actually asking that question. I got an opportunity to also butt in these points. Any question
Thank you,
else?
sir.
Thank you, Paul. Any more question before I move further?
Yes, it's Rajan again. My question
Yes.
is that you are focusing on the eradication of overall impurities of the chitta and whatever, to focus on the Samvada. But
Yes.
the one of the foundation which most of the thinkers accept, the to progress in the dialogue, we have to have certain thesis, then we have to have certain antithesis, then we may proceed for any kind of synthesis. Hegel proposes that. But it is my thesis for you. Like, do you think there is any kind of self possible without prior experiences, without historical experiences? There's, on the one hand, it is an individual consciousness. On the other hand, there is a collective consciousness. So there are two methods. One is phenomenological, which says that eradicate all sort of biases and so on. And on the other hand, there is a hermeneutical method, which says that there is no possibility of such kind of consciousness. Our self has already been predetermined by the
I got your
history,
point. I got
by
your
the culture, and so on.
See, my point is not to question the existence of self. Self is always is first, there is a biological self, which is objective self, and apart from that, there is a subjective. The entire subjective reality is experiential. is, I agree with with your standpoint. My question is never to eradicate biases. My question is to move from a reactionary paradigm to a paradigm of response. So to move from an effector's reality to an observer's reality. You will always be an observer. My point is that through Antar Samvad, what we will try to achieve is that we will look at things the way they are without being affected by them. Only then can we come out of, say, the mindset of a victim or a mindset of an oppressor, which again, through modern psychology they are not dissimilar from each other. There are several experiments that have happened, and the only possible way that I see dialogue, this is my point of view, is when we see, the moment you said eradication of biases, see, that is judgment of biases. Things have happened to me. Biases have come up because of those things, because of those incidents. I do not, my aim as a meditative dialogical practitioner is to ensure that I do not have a value judgment on that. If I do, then my subconscious will is bound to come in and somehow judge the person who created that incident on the basis of the person's, not only his particular individuality, but what color he was, what gender he was, what religion he was, what faith he practiced. These things will never stop until and unless I enter an observational reality. So it's not about eradicating biases. It's not about establishing biases. It's about being an observer where I try to become as non-judgmental as possible about what has happened. So that is, and the only way forward for that is just to enter a realm where there is less reaction and more response. And if I can do it individually to my own self, when I look at my own self in a compassionate way, only then can I do it to the others. That's what my point is. May I continue? Any other question?
Sir, may I ask a question, sir?
Yeah.
So I'm Rosie. So you have mentioned about the certain margas that concentrate on human beings' subconscious mind. So, sir, can you be a little more elaborative on those margas, like yoga marga, tantric marga? Sir, you have mentioned vipassana marga also, because and certain other also which I haven't written it down. So, sir, can you be please more? I think two or one sentences may be very fine. All these margas.
See, if I have to just go on the margas in just one, so there's a discourse between Shiva and Shakti, right? In that discourse itself, which is called as Vigyan Bhairav, there are 108 margas. So if I start talking about all the, even I don't remember all the names. So if I start talking about all the margas, but what I try to tell you is that the holistic concept of all those margas, the core of all those margas, or what I say, crux of all those margas, is to ensure a kind of existence which is observational, which is non-judgmental. So there are, I mean, you can either do it through the radical principles of the Indian tantric schools, or even modern day psychology. What one needs to do is to establish that we are living into an observation. We look at our existence as an observer rather than being affected by it. I'll give you an example. See the concept of pain. Pain is natural, but misery is unnatural, right? If you look at it, if suppose I'm having a cup of tea right now, I drop this cup. and it shatters into several pieces of glass. I'm trying to clean it up while I'm talking to you, and a small splinter of glass, a piece of glass enters my finger. It's pain. That's reality. Pain will happen. Now, what's my natural behavior? My natural behavior is, if I am, since I have a sane, objective mind, I will take that piece of glass out. I will clean my finger. I will apply medicine or let it be. I'm young. My white blood cells are pretty competent to take care of that. The thrombocytes would kick in, and it'll soon be cured. That's because I have a sane, objective mind. How do I have a sane, subjective mind? Now, how do I have an insane, objective mind? If I say no, I've got injured, I'll keep pressing this piece of glass into my finger. I won't take care of it. I'll push it more deeper and deeper. What will happen? Sooner or later, it'll turn gangrenous. I'll have to chop this finger off, and that's it. That's an insane objective mind. Now look, subjective pain. Subjective pain happens. As I said, I gave an example of relationship. Suppose you get into a relationship with someone else. There's rejection in that relationship. Now, what will a sane, subjective mind do? Try to move along in life as soon as possible, and things would be cured. But if we are untrained, if we have not practiced living in the present, if we've practiced living in the past a lot, or living in building on the future a lot, we will not remove that splinter that is struck. We will drive it deeper, and then, this finger, which represents the entire realm of relationships, we will chop it off. We will stop believing in human relationships. We will start criticizing the other gender. We'll start criticizing, and I mean anyone we meet. I know people who do that. All women are like this, all men are like this. All this comes from this particular untrained behavior. And you cannot solve these problems until and unless you have solved problems within. You have to train your subjective mind in a way that doesn't lead to such kind of unnatural subjective behavior. That was my point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I have one more question, last question.
Yeah, I think we should just keep it to questions, because what I wanted to speak, it's coming up in the questions. So yeah, please,
Yeah.
Zishan.
As you were talking about, I actually, my network connection went problem. So you were talking about the universal self. So
Yes.
do we need to, is it this universal self similar what we observe in Chandogya Upanishad between the dialogue of Udalaka and Shwetaketu?
It is very similar to that. Not only that, but it is also the universal self that it is in the dialogue, not only in the Chandogya Upanishad, but it is also in the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna in Gita. It is also the dialogue between Shiva and Shakti, as I said in Vigyan Bhairav. It is also the dialogue between after the debate which Shankaracharya had with Ubija Bharati, not the debate, but after the dialogue that Shankaracharya had with Ubija Bharati. So it's not that all these dialogues, they form a cumulative holistic index of what I'm trying to say. I have tried to collect this decantation of all these dialogues, and I'm trying to talk about a universe self, where your awareness, like through meditative principles, our awareness reaches a level where subjectively and objectively, I know it might baffle you that how can it happen objectively, but subjectively and objectively, our body feels like the entire cosmos. So whatever happens outside can be felt within. That kind of consciousness.
So, sir, we can say that in order to understand this social fabric better, we must also establish some kind of dialogue between the subjective self and the universal self.
But no, we must establish a equanimous relation between our objective self and our subjective self. If we are able to do that, we can understand the social realities much better, solely, not informationally, soulfully. Soulfully creating the paradigms of truth, love, compassion, and justice that is preached by all the faiths, that is taught by all the faiths. Like I have not come across a single faith that does not talk about these precepts, these tenets. So soulfully, we can understand all these realities. Informationally, of course, is different. You have to go into study of dialectics, study of logos, everything.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Any other question?
Yeah, so I have two questions. This is Pragya, and one is regarding the marks, the 108 marks. I just wanted to know that do people like find whatever is available and follow that, or do these marks find you, or how? So just that's just a curiosity question. And the second is, in Hinduism, in any of the stories or any of the mythology, do we have any a situation where a dialogue has failed, and what can we kind of learn from it? So these are my two questions.
Okay. Thank you. I think Zishan, your voice was delayed. Thank you, Pragya. Pleasure to have you. So I'll respond to the second question first. Since I'm talking about an antar samvad, or antar samvad will lead to antarvad. Once you've established antar samvad, you'll clearly understand that the word failed is a judgment. So you cannot have a failed dialogue. The moment you have dialogue, that is success. There is no such thing as a failed dialogue or even a successful dialogue, because there is no destination to be reached. Again, I had to say the word success because of the limitations of the language. But nothing is established. Even if you look at Mahabharata, even the war is not looked upon as a failed dialogue. Although Lord Krishna himself goes to the Kauravas and tries to explain to them the perils of war and why they should not indulge into it. But even the war is not looked upon as a failed dialogue. So once that realm of non-judgmental attitude is established within oneself, we will not look at dialogues or things or interactions as failed or as successful. We will look at as it happened. There are several examples to prove this. Success and failure. For example, in Ramayana, there is this story of a small bird that during a forest fire is trying to extinguish it by picking up a drop of water from a nearby river and putting it into the forest fire. So Narada, he asks the pertinent question, that the drop is so tiny in front of this humongous forest fire that it will not even reach the fire, it will evaporate midair. So the answer is very simple, that it is not the drop of water, but the intent of the bird that matters. So sometimes we also face this question, that there is so much injustice in the world, there's so much love, tyranny, hate. How can just me taking a few steps in that direction change this world? It's not about how powerful the steps are, but the necessity is that these steps must be initiated and taken, just like what Behzad is continuously doing by having these courses and having these wonderful people as dialogue practitioners. So yeah, and the first question about how the margas or the paths, see, there are several interpretations to that. I would say that one doesn't find a marga, or the marga doesn't find us. It's just that we all were born as meditative beings. We all were born as compassionate beings. We all were born as beings of love. What we've done is that through our social interactions and trainings, we have established obstructions in the path of meditation, in the path of compassion, in the path of love. Our duty is to remove those obstructions, and we are the paths ourselves. So all these margas, you would know to practice which one when you start removing those barriers that we ourselves have put up in the path of being a meditative being, of being a mindful being, of being a being of love or compassion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pragya.
So I think you can proceed now, and we can take more
No more
questions
questions.
at the end of your talk.
Yeah. Okay. So I've forgotten myself where I was, but yeah. So anyways, so this tenet of antar samvad is the first step, uh, uh, because until and unless we have a subconscious and a conscious mind that is actually it does not have the ability, suppose our mind does not have the ability of adopting a non-judgmental attitude, we should not enter the realm of being a dialogue practitioner. It being a dialogue practitioner, one must, and one of the questions had asked that eradication of biases. I would stress that the biases should not be eradicated, they should just be observed. Eradication itself is a violent behavior when it happens within. Just observation, and one must not undermine. Had it been one of my meditative uh, 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 like lectures, I would have explained it scientifically that observation is the most radical and dynamic human behavior that is possible. And in the realm of quantum physics, this is easily the most dynamic act that human beings are capable of. In fact, if one studies the double slit experiment, we will understand. If I'm sure some of you might be aware of the double slit experiment, in which the electron, the scientists tried to study electron if it was particle or wave, and there were two sets of experiments. Let's not get into the nitty-gritties, but the electron, in the end, the basic principle of that experiment is that the electron behaved differently as per the observer. So observation should not be, an observer's reality must not be taken lightly. It is very dynamic, and uh, it is actually capable of transforming uh, individual completely. Anyways, coming back to the dialogical principles. Once one has mastered antar samvad, then comes the bhaya samvad, and one applies all the same principles that one has applied to his or her own process of reaching the level of, say, a meditative living, to the other. And if you've not achieved the first step, you cannot have the second step into action. So the same non-judgmental attitude must be adopted when you're talking, when you're interacting with the other. By that, I mean that the same level of compassion should be attributed to the other, the same level of justice, the same level of truth. Everything should be of the same. If you are unable to achieve that, then your dialogue is incomplete. And again, I must overtly repeat that it's not a destination. You cannot reach that state of being. It is always a process which needs to be continuously improved. So this is the concept of Samvaad that I have gathered from the decantations of the Vedic philosophy and our entire philosophy of Hinduism. So one must, as per the same philosophy, one must look inwards to get the answers externally. I can see already it's 4:30. So shall I take questions finally now? And one by one, how would you do it, Behzad?
Yes, of course. Thank you for your talk. And already we did take a lot of questions, but if somebody wants to ask more questions, or if you have any comments, please feel free to click on raise hand and we can take it for you. Rajan?
Yeah, sir. Thank you. First of all, I congratulate to sir that he has elaborated beautifully his thesis. So my question, or to say a comment is that, you know, most of the religious thinker, or to say a philosopher, when they proposes the peace talk or the foundation for the peace proposals, they try to give a metaphysical foundation for their talk. And one of the foundation which have become a fable or a story throughout the history of philosophy as well as religion is that there is one reality. As sir also talked about that ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. And also he also quoted the Sufi thinkers quotation that there is a mirror which fall upon the earth and it has shattered and everyone has a pieces of that. But you know, why we cannot imagine that there are multiple realities and there are multiple paths as well? Why is it not? Why it is not that? And it is a very, you know, very critical question to all the philosopher, which I do not think is very much well founded by the thinkers and philosophers. So this is the question which I want to ask, like, why should we believe this fable which hasn't proven very well by the thinkers and can be countered very easily?
Okay, very, very good question. Thank you, Rajan. When I said ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti, my point was just to prove that all the faiths have to exist in a way so that there is no violence against each other. The basic core of any interfaith violence is because one doesn't want to accept the reality of the other, correct? As per your question, the beauty of Samvaad in Hinduism is it does not restrict you. You can believe in Dvaitvad, Advaitvad, Traitvad. You can believe into agnosticism, atheism. Nobody is going to actually question you. In fact, one of the famous philosophers known as Dhanna Jat of Western UP, what did he say? He says, Vivek Ved se upar hai. That your own thinking is above the Vedas. Was he thrown out of Hinduism? Were there attacks on him? No. His stories are so much popular in the villages of Western UP and Haryana. In fact, if you go towards Khatoli, you will see a lot of villages that talk about this practitioner. Again, Buddhism itself called Ved as knowledge, and what do they actually stressed on was that real knowledge is not the written Vedas, although written Vedas even did not exist then, because Vedas were always practiced through Shruti and Smriti. What did they exercise was Swavedana. That until and unless there is Swavedan, okay, this is information. Ved is information. That's the Buddhist reality. It has to, Jnana is divided into three parts. Information, wisdom, and knowledge. So information is what you see entire around you. You see living, you see conscious, you see unconscious, sentient, animals, birds. That's information. When that information goes through your wisdom, wisdom is what you are. You've been created by the cosmos as unique. So when that information goes through your process, it establishes your own jnana or knowledge. So you are free to believe that there's not one reality, that there are several reality. You can go enter the Marvel universe. You can say there is not one universe, there's a multiverse, and you are free to believe in whatever you want and act, not only believe, but also to preach. Nobody will stop you from doing that. Third, and very logical, because I really like this question, was that Vedas need to be understood in two parts: Shruti and Smriti. Now, Shruti, what is Shruti? Shrutan. People generally think it's just about hearing. No, Shrutan means the interaction that happens with all of the five senses. How you see the interaction, what you hear, what you smell, what you touch, what you taste. So once there is Shruti and then there is Samriti. Sam is Samta again. Smriti comes from where? Samriti. Samta, re dhatu, if you know, is evolution. So you have listened and then you have interacted with that information, and then being in balance and equanimity, how you evolve it, that is Smriti. Until and unless there is Shruti and Smriti, you would not understand the concept of knowledge. Vedas also means knowledge, not only those four books. So, Rajan, I would encourage you that the beautiful question you had, you said none of the philosophers. You are a philosopher yourself. Whenever you think differently, you are a philosopher. We all have to be philosophers. The prime thing is Samriti. You have to be in Samta and you have to be in evolution. That's it.
Thank you. Nadia?
Okay, sir. So I just wanted to ask, when you were speaking, I thought of John Rawls's original position and how he basically said that when parties don't have information, then they will be able to tailor principles of justice. So my question is that how does the Samvaad relate to what John Rawls is saying? Does it? Because they
The
are
only
trying to.
basic difference is, yeah, I got your question. The only basic difference is my point is that you would be able to come up with the principles of justice when you are not affected by what information or effect there is. Not the absence of information, but the absence of effect. And that will happen only because of non-judgmental attitude. That will only happen because of samta.
Does that answer your question, Nadia? Yeah. Okay. Arya?
So thank you for your presentation.
Thank
In
you.
the inner dialogue, I see these two major elements. The first is the developed prejudice. Developed prejudice are through my own experiences with the others. And the second one is about the infused prejudice that comes from the other part, the counterpart. The first part I am able to work upon, and then I become so observational. And then I have an attitude of welcoming others. And what should we do to heal that which is infused to me regarding others?
How does the infused, I'm having a counter question. How do you develop infused privilege?
Maybe through the preachings of others about the different religions, the social media, which plays a vital role to infuse prejudice about other religions. So how am I going to heal them? Because both they are part of my inner dialogue. I am going through within myself.
So very, very pertinent question during these times. But this concept of, say, social media, these lies that are meddled these days, and not only meddled, they're also peddled these days a lot. What happens is, if you think this process has continued from ages, if you think that there is a developed prejudice that you have for your own self, right? Only through an observational reality you'll understand that even that is an illusion. Once you understand that this is an illusion, you will not ever, never, ever will you fall in the trap of the infused. I'll explain to you why. Understand the process. The process is, this is Manu Singh, right? I like myself. The first basic principle is I like myself. Do I have a relationship with myself? Direct. So I have a relationship with the other, correct?
Yes.
Look at it closely. I don't have a relationship with the other ever. What I do is, suppose I have a girlfriend. It's assumed that I have a relationship with my girlfriend. I don't. If I look at it in an observational reality, I will see that I don't have a relationship with my girlfriend. I have a relationship with the image of my girlfriend. Right? If I say, suppose my girlfriend's name is Sonia, right? So I love Sonia. Now I have formed an image of Sonia through the same ahem that I was talking about earlier. And if there is a slight deviation between the real Sonia and that image, then I get disturbed. So I have an image that Sonia always tells the truth to me. Now, suppose one day Sonia does not tell the truth to me and I come to know about it, right? I will get disturbed. And because I will get disturbed, I will disturb Sonia. Similarly, look closely. I don't have a relationship with my own self. When this relationship is happening, I have also created an image of me. This image that Manu is hurt by the lie told by Sonia, all this is socially and culturally infused. All of this. So what I am doing is actually, I am just witnessing a relationship between the image of Manu and an image of Sonia and getting affected by it. Once I train my mind, see, this is more complex than AI.
Yeah, I feel
this is more complex. So we all do this. We all create an image of ourselves that Manu is this, he's great, he speaks great, he can validate any point. Before this session, this is what is going on in my mind. I can talk about anything, I can answer any question. Suppose there is a deviation here, it'll disturb me. Right? So if that disturbance happens, I will create a bias. I will create a prejudice. Now, what social media does is, and this is what is known as a logarithmic bubble scientifically. The moment you start looking for those biases online, it will start showing you. Right? If I start looking for, see, I start following a news that, oh, see, a particular faith, a man of a particular faith has attacked another. This logarithmic bubble will show me that particular information. So technically, there is no dialectical difference between infused prejudice and developed prejudice. It's all the same. It's just that I have to perceive within me what the problem is. The problem is till the time I am having these fake relationships between images, I will not be able to love openly. I'll not be able to love multidimensionally. My relationships will be screwed. My concept of my development, that will be screwed. Everything that I do in my life will be screwed. It comes from there's one story that I keep telling all the time, and that this one person, he goes to a doctor, and I repeat it a lot, but it makes a lot of sense, especially giving these examples. Goes to a doctor, and he says, "Doctor, I have a strange problem. Everything in my body causes pain. I touch my forehead, it hurts. I touch my nose, it hurts. I touch my cheek, it hurts. I touch my shoulder, it hurts. Everything hurts." The doctor had not come across such a unique problem in his life. He's shocked. He asks him to run all the diagnostic tests and come back the following day. When he comes back, the doctor says, "I'll tell you two things. One is great, one is slightly problematic." So the great thing is, everything in your body is perfectly fine. There is no problem at all. The problem is your finger is broken. So whatever you touch, it causes pain. But this is such a foolish story. But what the message here is, that this finger represents the connection that we have with our own selves. If this connection gets damaged, everything in this world will cause pain and anxiety. Everything, every realm, the realm of relationship, the realm of, say, career building, the realm of gaining knowledge, the realm of any realm you enter, it will cause problems. Antar Samvad aims to correct this basic problem. That's it. So this is the greatest AI there is. This imageal construction, and you being a non-observer but being an effector, you not accepting, and by you I don't mean you, but we not accepting the reality that there is, not looking at it observationally, that's how humans are. Sometimes they lie. Look at the intent. Sometimes they do things, right? So this is very important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arya. There's a question in the chat box. Manu, can you read it, or do I read it for you?
Just a second, I'll read it.
From
It is
Dipanshu.
from Dipanshu.
Yes.
Sir, Hinduism so vast and overarching, embedded in dialogic practices, always stresses on plurality and understanding and incorporating others the way they are, irrespective of their beliefs and faiths. I completely agreed. But how you see Hinduism, a distorted form, which is being preached by some faulty and malign, selfish people who never follow Hinduism but work in the name of it and create divisions. How do I see that? I see that as a personal weakness of those people, their personal agenda. You know, any religion, not only Hinduism, any religion has two basic divisions. 95% of all religions are spiritual, and 5% of these religions are also the difference part. Like spirituality wise, all of the religions are the same. So sorry. So yeah, where was I? These all the religions are same. All these religions have the same concepts of truth, love, compassion, justice, non-violence. Tolerance is not even a precept. There's celebration of the other. So the problem is the practice part, which is often on the wheels of some kinds of cultural practices, right? Very simple differences. Somebody would pray like this, somebody would pray like this, somebody would pray in some other way. Only this is the difference, and this is where people who have actually turned religions into business houses, they will react. They will try to use these differences and create divisions between us, because for them it's all about money, it's all about power. And the more the sheep they have, they're converted sheeps, the more powerful, the more rich they feel. So when you talk about those people, some faulty and malign, you're already aware of that. Your only job is to ensure that other fellow beings are also aware of what particular faiths actually try to teach. And how these so-called businessmen, not priests, not Maulanas, not pujaris, not sadhus, all these particular middlemen, all these businessmen, I'm being very direct here, how they use people as fuel for driving their own engines, through creating insecurity, through creating violence, through creating intolerance towards the other, and also establishing that status of middleman between you and yourself. Before, I would say you and Almighty, you and yourself. They start telling you what is guilt, what is shame, what is violence, how you are being polluted. We all know that. We all have that sense. So the only way is to watch out for these middlemen, and it's very easy to distinguish between a real religious practitioner. If I would say that it's just visible when you can see a religious practitioner, when you can see a middleman, a businessman. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions or comments? Apparently no. Okay. Arya, you want to say something?
So I don't know, it is silly, but I really want to ask you, do we need to have this dialogue with the universal self? Is dialogue needed between the universal self and the individual self?
No, I think if you have listened to exactly how much time I devoted to having dialogue with your own self, if you have dialogue, see, again, English dialogue is die and logos. It's completely different from Samvaad. So I'll come back to Samvaad. If you have Samvaad with your own self, thoroughly, properly, patiently, persistently, then every other interaction with material, with organic, inorganic, matter, living, consciousness, everything would be a Samvaad. And by Samvaad, I told you an interaction that does not judge but loves. So our existence is Samvaad. Whenever I'm interacting with anyone, it's not just about intellectually exchanging viewpoints or intellectually exchanging information. It's about everything. It's how I look at the other, what I think about the other, how I treat the other. So as part of living, we interact, and that interaction should be not vad-vivadik, which is debate, in which I try to downplay, but samvadik, which is equanimous and loving. That's the whole point. That is what I was trying to say. So it is not necessary at all, but it will happen since you are living.
Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Pragya? Pragya?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are there any readings that you would suggest to us? It was also asked by somebody else, and I kind of want to reiterate if there are any readings that you would refer to some of us who want to kind of explore this further.
Informationally, I would suggest reading Krishnamurti. I mean, there's a beautiful book by Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti, as Beyond Violence. And I would suggest reading The Marriage of Sense and Soul by Ken Wilber. I would personally recommend Marriage of Sense and Soul. It is really good, and it informationally builds the same kind of argument that I try to build up in a more observational way. It's really good. If you get a chance, also read other works of Ken Wilber. but the marriage of sense and soul is really beautiful.
Thank you, Pragya, for this question. Now, there's a question in the chat box from Sakshi Bhatt, and I'll read it for you. What could be the ways to engage ourselves in Samvaad? And is there any course related to it?
Course. I think what Behzad is doing right now is a beautiful course. But yeah, for Samvaad, I would say that I would suggest personal. One of my courses, one of my camps would be coming up in the first week of December. If somebody is interested, I'll send Behzad the information. If somebody wants to join in, you're very welcome. Apart from that, there are several like places to go. My recommendation would be that all of you should do one 10-day retreat of Vipassana. It'll be amazing. The way it is taught in a very non-business environment, that's the best part that I like. It is very simple. People talk a lot about it being difficult. It's not difficult at all. I think Pragya would be able to tell you that. She's been there. But my recommendation would be that you must try one 10-day retreat of Vipassana. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. So with this, we come to the end of our session today. Thank you so much, Manu, for joining us. I know your activism keeps you very busy, and despite that, you made time for us. Thank you. Thank you all for your questions and comments.
Thank
of course,
you.
Thank you, sir.
it is your questions and comments which make the sessions interactive, and it is very important. One important announcement: we do not have any class next week because of Diwali. So on the 3rd and 4th of November, we don't have any classes. We will meet the week after. So happy Diwali to you once again.
Happy
And
Diwali.
see you soon. Take care. Thanks, Manu, once again. Bye-bye.